Transformers Age of Extinction is actually one of the better sequels. What? More than just fun action scenes, it also seems like the film that they cared about the most to actually have character in it, and it has some of the most of the actual robots in the film. But like most things, it could have been better, and following on my series by popular demand, let's continue. This is Transformers Age of Extinction, another take. There will also be some last night stuff thrown in. We open with our typical Optimus monologue, talking about after the destruction of Chicago, and the end of the Autobot Decepticon War. The Decepticons who surrendered, including Megatron, have been trying to repent for what they did by repairing Chicago. We see Breakdown, and nowadays he's going by Prowl, and there are still Transformers coming to Earth, such as Hot Rod, who used to be Rodimus Prime, who does not have a pointless French accent, former Decepticon Drift, former Decepticon Windblade, Bulkhead, and Trax. But many of the citizens are very upset about this because the Decepticons, took over for a month in the last film and completely leveled Chicago. So public opinion on all Transformers has started to turn. But Optimus is hopeful that eventually the public will start to turn back and not hate the Decepticons for what they did in the past, and hopefully we can grow a better future. Then we cut to a bunch of protesting around Chicago, and the Stunticons of all cons are trying to calm it down, but it's not really working. And a bunch of kids from the crowd don't really care, they're just here because their parents are, and they sneak into Chicago to steal some souvenirs. They come across a Viacon ship from the last film. Oh no, 2 Viacons emerge from it, still alive, and they attack the kids. Ratchet and former Con Prowl are cleaning up, but then they see the Viacons and run to help the kids. But then Megatron flies in, transforms, and dropkicks the 2 Viacons into the ground, crushing them. And we can see that he no longer has his fusion cannon. The kids are scared that it's Megatron. Megatron tries to say that it's fine, he's not bad anymore, and the kids are still screaming. The Megatron starts to think fast and tears off a wheel from the Viacon, try to give it to the kids, and they still just run away. Prowl tries to say that look on the bright side, at least you saved them. But Megatron turns around and walks away, saying it's still not enough for what he did. Showing that Megatron hasn't fully gone over being the leader of the Decepticons and causing all the destruction that he did. Then we cut to another planet and we're introduced to another group of Transformers.
Tarn? I think he's still alive. You know what, Helix? I do believe you're right. When he stopped sobbing and begging for his life, I assumed that was that. Kaon, give him one last jolt and release him. That, Voss, is the saddest sound of all. The sound of a transformation cog grinding to a halt. But don't worry, I'll play some music to take his mind off the paralysis.
Tarn apologizes to Black Shadow about Vosk. He only speaks Old Cybertronian rather than New Cybertronian. He's a bit of a linguistic puritist. Old Cybertronian sounds like gibberish, but in reality it's actually Welsh, mixed with old computer sounds. Black Shadow is still confused as to what's going on and who they are, which Tarn explains that they're the DJD, the Decepticon Justice Division.
Our job is to hunt down any Decepticons who, by their action or inactions, have frustrated the realization of Megatron's goals, and introduce them to a world of unremitting pain. I'd have thought that was obvious. But take to heart. If word of your preposterously gruesome demise reaches just one hesitant Decepticon and terrifies him into staying the course, then all the pain you've suffered would have been worth it. But the war's over. But the war's what? The war's over? Oh, Black Shadow. That's sweet, but the war won't be over until Megatron says so. And he'll say nothing until he presides over a society so peaceful that the very notion of conflict is literally inconceivable. As he writes in Towards Peace, my weapon is my burden, a reminder of the path I was forced to take. When the word weapon is emptied of meaning, when the rejection of my burden is of significance to no one other than myself, only then shall I remove it from my arm. Because only then will I have earned the right to rid myself of my burden. I could go on, but listen. Have you not noticed? I've stopped the music. Is that significant? Why, yes. Yes, it is. You're thinking, I've seen what the other four can do, but their leader, with his fine music and his literary quotations and his double fusion cannon, what makes him so special? Here's the thing. They say I can talk people to death. Weaponized conversation, they say. Maybe so, they say. But you can modulate the timbre of your voice so that it falls into step with the pulse of the listener's spark. By gradually lowering your voice, they say you can coax the spark into giving up. That's what they say. What do you say? I'm so sorry. Bored now. Who's next on the list?
The others talk amongst themselves as Tarn takes the badge off of Black Shadow's parts and sticks it to himself. A thing that all the DJD will do. Showing no matter who you are, Autobot, Decepticon, Elite Guard, what, you're always subject to being judged in the code of Decepticons. Then Tesserus picks up a message and tells Tarn. It turns out to be the message from the end of the last movie by Megatron.
It's Megatron, Commander. He's defected.
I am the founder of the Decepticon movement. I started it, and I am about to finish it. I hereby renounce Decepticonism. To those Decepticons still out there, I give one final order. Stand down. Discard your weapons. Tear off your badges. And stand down. The Decepticons are over. The war is over. Free yourself from the shackles of a flawed philosophy and move on.
Keon, meet me in the fueling chamber.
And it cuts a year later, it's 2014. We see what we think is Ness setting up around a river. We actually remember to fill out all the green screens on these screens. We think they're going to attack a Decepticon who's hiding out in a boat. But what? Who's this? Cemetery Wind? And it's not a Decepticon on a boat, it's Ratchet who's helping the Decepticon scrap it. Ratchet just thinks they're Nest helping out. But what? They start shooting at him and blowing him up, and they have lasers, and he's like, what? And he tries escaping. But before he can open a ground bridge, he gets blown off the way. They surround him, and he tries screaming that he's an Autobot. But one of them, James Savoy, says, doesn't really matter after what happened in Chicago. And they manage to actually execute Ratchet. Then we cut to the DJD ship, the Peaceful Tyranny, on their course to Earth. And Helix tells Kaon that he's concerned that Tarn hasn't been out of his chamber for a year. We see Tarn in his healing chamber, and we cut into his head, and he's just thinking to himself how the DJD are kind of now irrelevant since the war's over. He doesn't know what to do anymore. And then he hears a deep voice saying that he can be an assistant. Tarn is confused, and the world around him just kind of shifts, and he sees Unicron. Unicron introduces himself to Tarn, and he's like freaking out. Unicron says he needs Tarn to be his champion to awaken his knights, as well as he feels the presence of Primus. So he needs Tarn and his crew to destroy the wielder of the 13's powers, Optimus Prime. On one hand, that would mean that Tarn has to side with his people's equivalent of the devil, but now this means he actually has something to do. He has a purpose again.
Change of plan.
We cut to base Metroplex, and at this point it's just become a city, even for humans. And we see Spike and Carly goes to work, and Spike is full dad mode with their year-old son Daniel. Spike decides to visit Chip, who's giving a little tour to labs to a bunch of kids, showing them how they've been combining transform technology so they can turn one thing into another thing, just like them. The kids are kind of out of it and don't care anymore. Chip sighs and says, do you want to visit the actual Transformers? And all the kids start getting happy and start clapping their hands, and Spike joins in comically. We see a bunch of Transformers training, and Bumblebee and Spike have a reunion as the kids are introduced to the new Transformers. Optimus says he used to be just like B, a young new model that didn't know about the world, and he was forced into leadership. So he's actually kind of glad to get a demotion here on Earth. The tracks with the voice of Steve Buscemi jokes that he's glad as well, and Windblade tells him to shut up. Drift tries to give them a haiku, which Bulkhead doesn't really understand. Spike notices that Ratchet is missing, and Bumblebee says, well, that's the thing, we've all been trying to figure that out. He was helping out with the ex-cons in Chicago, and he never reported since last night. And Optimus says that he doesn't believe that the Decepticons did anything, so they're going to go ask around in Chicago to see what's going on. Then we cut to the Sonora Desert, and we see a big truck, and it transforms. It's Ultra Magnus, who at this point just became Clench. Magnus, since his defeat in Chicago, has become the gas mask faced tyrant over the remaining Decepticons who didn't defect to the Autobots, and he controls the energon supply to them. But it's also kind of sad because they don't really have much at base Trypticon, and all the Decepticons are fighting each other for just a little bit of energon. Warpath transforms into a Hiss tank and fires at them to calm down and single file for their energon. Just one of them falls over and dies from lack of energon, and they don't have that many Viacons left. And none of the cons even care that Overload just died. They just kind of walk over him to get the energon from Magnus. And we see Blitzwing just shake his head in disapproval. We see Starscream and Slipstream talking to each other.
Wait! Isn't it obvious? Tesla's on his way out, and when he goes down, his most loyal soldiers are taking the plunge with him. But it doesn't have to be that way! Not for us!
You really want to form a secret alliance with me?
Maybe. Now, let's discuss a little passion project of mine.
They transform and fly off to a secret base. At the secret base, we see Ratchet's body being upgraded, kind of looking like Autobot Spike. You see a bunch of humans hooking him up to power cables.
Welcome back, sir.
What have you done?
What we needed to, in order to save you, Silas.
I'm one of them.
Savoy explains to Archivil that his group, Cemetery Win, is a break-off from Nest. They found out what happened to Dr. Archivil and what his ideas were. They kind of agree, but they also blamed the Autobots for the destruction of Chicago. So they decided what better than to create their own god by melding human and machine.
Your brain, fused with the donor's nervous and skeletal systems.
The perfect meld of man and machine. Exquisite.
And yeah, this is a G1 reference. And he complains about the colors as the two Seekers arrive, but before they enter with their human pilot projections, and Starscream is super over the top. And Starscream tries to plead with Archivil that they still need their help, because the Autobots taken over the Decepticons and they're starving, and Archivil decides to help out the Decepticons again. Meanwhile, the Peaceful Tyranny finally arrives, and the DJD decide to split up, with Voss going to find the Knights of Unicron, and the rest going to Earth. And we get the scene of Kaon and Helix, the same as Shatter and Dropkick from Bumblebee, of course slightly reworked to fit in. And Voss is flying around, and the location that Tarn gave him is at the Faroe Islands, and he flies there, but it turns out the place he's supposed to be is underwater, so he transforms and takes a dive. And we cut to Chicago, and they're still being repaired. And the Autobots talk to the ex-cons, and Megatron has no idea where Ratchet could be. And Tarn and Tessalus come across the Decepticons who are planning an attack on Autobot City. And Tarn gets up into Ultra Magnus' face. And it's similar to Tarn's confrontation with Death Source from IDW, with Tarn asking them to join him, but as well as to join Unicron. And once he transforms, they'll destroy the people of this world which cause so much harm to their race. On one hand, that would mean siding with this universe's equivalent of the devil, but Magnus gets to save more of his own kind, so he kind of agrees to do it, in exchange for Energon. Agreement the DJD won't torture them, as well as getting him to show that Tarn is very loyal to his crew. and the deal's made. Everyone cheers, they're getting more energon, but Blitzwing's kind of reluctant at the idea of helping Unicron. Cemetery Wind sees this and decides to hold off on their attack just yet. Meanwhile, everyone else, they feel some ground shake, and then a volcano of all things appears out in the skyline of Chicago. We see some guy in London feel the shaking, and he says to himself, and it begins. We see some of the heads of Ness, like Meering, Lennox, Simmons, and even Flint, discussing all this. All the other human characters enter, discussing that was the biggest earthquake they've ever felt, as all the Autobots and ex-cons ground bridge in. Wheeljack explains the anomaly of these new volcanoes and how they're spewing lava from the Earth's core. And it's happening in a circle around the world. And going by the news, apparently there's a bunch of dinosaurs running around in England. And everyone's super confused as to what's going on. And Wheeljack notices if you play back the lava sounds, it kind of sounds like a heartbeat and a scream. Everyone's like, what? Then Simmons is given a call by that guy from earlier who says that all of them need to come to London immediately. What's going on is massive. As a member of the Order of Witwicken, he needs them there now. Because it turns out the Earth is Unicron, and he's waking up. And Simmons has his phone on speaker, and everyone hears this and gasp. So everyone ground bridges over, except for a small group, including Megatron, led by Cliffjumper. The man introduces himself as Sir Edmund Witwicken, 12th Earl of Fulgen, Order of Witwicken, and heir of Percival. Simmons already knows who he is, and they do a weird handshake. Spike notices the similar last name, but Edmund just admits that, well, since he goes by Witwicky, that means he's from the American branch, which makes us 14th cousins, which makes us nothing at all. Optimus asks how he knows about Unicron. Edmund admits that the Order of Witwicken is a secret order founded all the way back in 543 CE to try and defend against the awakening of Unicron, founded by the Knights of the Round Table and his own Knights of Dinosaur. Meanwhile, back at Base Metroplex, the Decepticons are attacking, but since they're so low powered, most of their weapons don't really work, and even just the turrets outside of the city manage to take out a couple of them. But then suddenly, Megatron sees on the screen the DJD. He calls for everyone to return to base, and he heads out.
Tarn, Megatron. At least let me see your face. This is my face. What did you want to say to me? I surrender. You surrender? Of course you do. That's all you do these days. I haven't finished. I surrender on one condition. That you spare the others. Your life to preserve theirs. They're only in this situation because of me. That's true of all of us. You think I'd be standing here looking like this if it wasn't? If you hadn't... I know. I corrupted you. You liberated me. You helped me realize my potential. You saw greatness in me. You saw yourself. I saw an opportunity to hurt someone. I saw a chance to prove a point. After all, if you could be turned. You think I've changed, but all I've done is change back. I'm more him than the monster he became. The monster you still idolize. My Megatron is a hero. A revolutionary who knew when to fight and when to keep fighting. I went too far. Did you? Of course I did. You're proof of that. You've achieved more than any Cybertronian who's ever lived. Yes. So why do I feel as if I've wasted my life? You want to talk about wasted lives? What about all the people who died following your orders? The road sweepers and the haulers, the miners, all those who died in service to a future you promised to bring about. Did they waste their lives? Did I waste mine? Look around you. Every flower represents a life you ended. A death for which you bear full responsibility. You think they're all Autobots? I'm more than aware of my legacy. Every day I collapse under its weight. Is there anything you don't regret? Anything you wouldn't change? I don't know. That's enough! I can't stomach any more of this. I just hope you realize that I'm doing this because I care. I'm doing this because I admire the person you were. And hate the person you are. Is this it? You won't even try to resist? Fight back, damn you! Never again. If you fight back, I'll stop. I won't have a choice. Even after all my upgrades, even after all the nuke. I know you can beat me. Megatron unchecked can beat anyone. Not anymore. Never again. You're better dead! But you're not dead, are you? If you were dead, your hollow statue would have turned itself off. No matter. One more shot, and it's lights out. Step away from the fossil, Tarn. If anyone's going to kill Megatron, it's me.
Cliffjumper jumps in, taking out the Decepticon Mohawk, moves on to the DJD, and he starts out fine, but eventually they start pummeling him and Helix rips off his arm. Khan asks where Optimus Prime is, which Cliffjumper says he refuses to tell them. Helix says, "Oh, we have our ways to get you to talk." And then suddenly, Cemetery Wind approaches, with plenty of energon for the cons. Cliffjumper realizes Ratchet's with them, and he looks weird. He introduces himself as Dr. Archival. Starscream says something like Cliffjumper has worn out his usefulness, and he executes him. Magnus yells at him for doing it because he hasn't even begun to be useful to them. But Tarn realizes, well, if this is the team they left behind, they have Autobot City. They continue their assault on the city, and Starscream says, "Oh, how it pains me to do this," as he kicks Megatron when he's down. And that's where I'm going to end it for now. Stay tuned for part 2. If you have any suggestions for how to continue the part, let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for when part 2 comes out.